Sometimes all I wanna be is your sunshine, but I can be the rain. I fill you up to the top. I give you all I got. When you're running low on magical, maybe I can hold you tight. Try a little supply to me. Try a little supply to me. When the night's too much and you need a touch, maybe I can kiss you right. Try a little supply to me. Just try a little supply to me. Baby, tell me what you want, 'cause I'ma give you all I got, girl. Baby, tell me what you want. Baby, tell me what you want. My hands shaped like a puzzle you can fit in. I wanna be the pieces that you're missing. Oh, I can see the picture that we're both in. I could be the one to be the keys to your lock. I give you all I got. If you're running low on magical, maybe I can hold you tight. Try a little supply into me. Let's try a little supply into me. When the night's too much and you need a touch, maybe I can kiss you right. Try a little supply into me. Just try a little supply into me. If you're running low on magical, maybe I can hold you tight. Try a little supply into me. Let's try a little supply into me. When the night's too much and you need a touch, maybe I can kiss you right. Try a little supply into me. Let's try a little supply into me. Baby, tell me what you want, 'cause I'ma give you all I got, girl. Baby, try a little supply into me. Baby, try a little supply into me.
I spent last night in the arms of a girl in Louisiana. And though I'm out on the highway, my thoughts are still with her. Such a strange combination of a woman and a child. Such a strange situation, stopping every 100 miles, calling Baton Rouge. A replay of last night's events roll through my mind. Except a scene or two, a race by sweet red wine. And I see a truck stop sign ahead, so I change lane. I need a cup of coffee and a couple dollars change, calling Baton Rouge. Operator, won't you put me on through? I gotta send my love down to Baton Rouge. Hurry up, won't you put her on the line? I gotta talk to the girl just one more time. Hello, Samantha, dear, I hope you're feeling fine. And it won't be long until I'm with you all the time. But until then, I'll spend my money up right down to my
3, 4. Dream, 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 dream when I want you in my arms, when I want you and all your charms. Whenever I want you, all I have to do is dream, 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 dream when I feel blue in the night, when I need you to hold me tight. Whenever I want you, all I have to do is dream. I could make you mine, taste your lips of wine, anytime, night or day. Only trouble is, gee whiz, I'm dreaming my life away. I need you so that I could die. I love you so, and that is why whenever I want you, all I have to do is dream, 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 dream. I could make you mine, taste your lips of wine, anytime, night or day. Only trouble is, gee whiz, I'm dreaming my life away. I need you so that I could die. I love you so, and that is why whenever I want you, all I have to do is dream, 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 dream.
On my way, on my way, on my way, on my way. I would like to reach out my hand, oh, me say, oh, me tell you to run. On my way, on my way. Nobody say, nobody on. Well, pick me up with golden hand. Oh, me say, oh, me tell you to run. On my way, on my way. Nobody say, nobody on. Well, I would like to hold my little hand. How we will run, how we will cry. I would like to hold my little hand. How we will run, how we will cry. Send me in my way, send me in my way, send me in my way, send me on my way, send me in my way, send me in my way, send me on my way. I would like to reach out my hand, oh, me say, oh, me tell you to run. Nobody say, nobody on. Well, pick me up with golden hair, me say, oh, me tell you to run. Nobody say, nobody on. Well, I would like to hold my little hand. How we will run, stretch out my hand. Oh, me say, oh, me tell you to run. On my way, on my way. Nobody say, nobody else.
Hello. Morning, everyone. Good morning, good morning. If you can start making your way to your seats, we're going to start here in about 3 minutes. And so we're going to do our best not to be on typical Delta Sig time. So a couple minutes, find your seats, please, and we're going to get going here shortly. No. No.
Good morning, brothers and guests. Good morning and welcome to the second day of our convention. I hope everybody had a good night last night at the welcome reception and whatever activities that you did after that. I see a few people may still be out somewhere on the 16th Street of Denver, but thank you all for being here. I'm really excited this morning to introduce you to someone that has spent a lot of time thinking about guys, the challenges that they are facing, what they're capable of, and how the world can better support them, and how we, guys, can better support each other, our families, communities, and the wider society. Our guest today is Richard Reeves. Now, the moment he starts speaking, you'll notice something a bit different. That accent. Yep, he's from across the pond, and he grew up just outside of London, so don't be alarmed if when he starts speaking that you feel a little smarter and maybe more sophisticated just listening to him. Richard went to Oxford University, which is like the Harvard of England, but with older buildings, fewer sweatshirts, and sadly, no fraternities. After college, Richard became a national journalist covering economics and culture in the UK in his 20s. The Guardian newspaper sent him to the US for a year to dig up some quirky things about America and Americans. And somewhere in between the monuments and the cheeseburgers, Richard said he fell in love with America. He did go back to the UK, though, and ended up working as the director of strategy for the deputy prime minister. And somewhere in the mix, he also married an American, and they had 3 sons. So yes, he had front row seats to the boy experience at home and in his work. And since moving to the US in 2012, Richard has been at the Brookings Institution, which is consistently ranked among the top think tanks in the world. There, he has led the Center on Children and Families, but most recently, he wrote a book that some of you may have heard of Boys and Men: Why the Modern Male is Struggling, Why It Matters, and What to Do About It. It was named Book of the Year by The Economist, The New Yorker, and even President Obama. Not bad company. And in writing this book, it inspired him to launch an entirely new institute focused on understanding and addressing the challenges facing boys and men in today's world. He will tell you more about that himself. So please join me in giving a big warm welcome to Richard Reeves.
Thank you. Thank you. It is an honor to be here. What's not in the bio is that not only did I fall in love with America, but I'm born on the 4th of July. It's actually my birthday. So it was meant to be. And in fact, I went on a podcast where this came up. Hands up who's heard of Theo Von? Okay, keep your hand up if you're over the age of 30 and you've heard of Theo Von. Congratulations. And Theo said, he's a very known podcaster and comedian, he said, do they kick you out of England if you're born on the 4th of July? And I thought, no, but that's an interesting idea. Maybe we should give citizenship to everybody born on the 4th of July. But then I thought, that's a terrible idea. Everyone would be trying to time the births, right? Can you imagine, like on July 3rd, what the maternity wards would be like? Keep it in. No, not yet. But I do want to take this opportunity to say thank you not only for having me here, it is a real honor to speak here, and I want to thank you for the work you're doing in this space, but I also want to thank you as a proud American now for having me. In 2016, I became a US citizen in Baltimore City. I am incredibly proud of this country, and thank you. And I absolutely love this country. It is an amazing country. Sure, we have issues like many countries, but as a citizen, someone who became a citizen, I think in some ways I appreciate it even more. One of my odder policy proposals maybe is that no one should graduate high school in the US without attending a citizenship ceremony. There's something incredibly beautiful about the experience of watching people become a citizen, of becoming a citizen. Every year on the anniversary of becoming a citizen myself, I take out the letter from then President Barack Obama, as it turns out, saying, welcoming me to America and saying, I am asking you to take on both the opportunities and the responsibilities of citizenship. Every year I reread that letter. And I do think that there's something incredibly powerful about taking on board those responsibilities as well. And I fear that too many people who have the incredible blessing to be born as US citizens don't quite understand how deep that blessing is. And so I would love more people to experience. So born on the 4th of July, US citizen. Yes, I sound weird. I also now live in East Tennessee, by the way, so go Vols. My youngest son is a University of Tennessee graduate, just graduated, and so I'm deeply now immersed in the American experience. And I'm going to talk today a little bit about some of the data that's driven the work, and I'm going to take a risk here. I'm told this is called going into the triangle. Am I allowed to do this if I'm not actually a member of the fraternity? right now? Can I think about it just for a second? So I'm going to go through some charts. I'm going to go through some slides. I'm going to go through some data. But as a former journalist, I learned to not do what we call burying the lead, which is, wait till the end of the story before you say what it is you've really come to say. So I'm going to say that now, and then I'm going to say it again, which is what's happening to a lot of our boys and men in this country, I think, is a lack of brotherhood, a lack of connection, a lack of opportunities for service, purpose, and solidarity. And so I'm going to conclude with the view that actually there is a call here to all of us to be part of the solution to what I think is a really deep challenge. And that means what you do out of this room is every bit as important as what a senator does or a governor does or anybody else. This is something that we have to do, and we have to do it together. So I'm going to conclude with that, which is a call. But I'm going to start, this is the book of Boys and Men. Yes, it was on President Barack's reading list, it got all those honors, but I will tell you that I couldn't find a publisher who was willing to publish it in 2021 because it was seen as so controversial to advocate for boys and men. It was seen as something that would just get me into trouble. And hopefully, most of you in this room will agree that advocating for boys and men is not something that should be controversial. The reason it is because so many people think that advocating for boys and men, noticing their problems, acknowledging them and addressing them, somehow means you must be anti-women or anti the modern world. That in order to turn more attention to boys and men, we have to somehow turn back the clock on women and girls. I don't want that to happen. It's not going to happen. And I think it's incredibly important that the work we do for boys and men is never seen as in opposition. Now, there's a think tank. I think we all agree we need more think tanks, right? I mean, if we can agree anything, it's like America needs more think tanks. So here's a new one, the American Institute for Boys and Men. Please sign up for our newsletter. If you do one thing for me today, sign up for our newsletter at aibm.org. We're a small but growing organization. I'm pleased to say that we are getting more funding, more interest in just putting out the facts, trying to understand what's happening with our boys and men and getting more solutions. And so I think this is a case where actually better research is genuinely required. Here are my three boys. Cameron on the left, George in the middle, Bryce on the right. Cameron's the one that just graduated from Tennessee. George lives in the UK, he's 29, Cam's 23, and then on the right, Bryce. And Bryce is perhaps the one who we worried most about. I think a lot of parents, junior parents say, oh, he's the one we worry about. And of course, you worry about all of them. But Bryce really struggled in the education system. I'm sharing this with his permission, I should say. We had a call from the school at one point, his high school, and said, did you know that Bryce hasn't been in school for the last 3 weeks? And we said, no, we did not know that. Couldn't you have told us earlier? And they said, we've been emailing you both to let you know that his attendance is zero. And so under interrogation, we discovered that Cameron, the one on the left, who is very, very good at technology, had managed to get into our email accounts and forward all the emails from Montgomery County Public Schools so that we would become unaware of his older brother's absences. So in a way, it was brotherly love. Covering up his absences, he just graduated high school, took a while to recover, and then did make it through college. And I'm pleased to say that he is now a teacher in Baltimore City. And it's weird because I said to him, I said, you know when you're a teacher, you have to go. But there's something rather beautiful about that story, which is that he wanted to kind of go back into the education system where he himself had struggled so much. And I think it's an act of service. You don't get badly paid in Baltimore City, it turns out now either, but it's also something that he wanted to kind of give back, and so I couldn't be prouder of him. This is like a mantra for me. C.P. Scott was the founder of the Manchester Guardian, and he said comment is free, which is still the name of the Guardian's commentary pages, but facts are sacred. And if we can disagree, we should disagree positively about lots of this stuff, and I'm sure we will when we get to Q&A. At least I hope we will. But let's get the facts right first. And so I'm going to share some facts with you. And again, just a reminder, this is not a zero-sum game. My wife was trying to raise money for a business. I think it's even in my speaker's contract now that I am obliged to say that only 2% of venture capital money goes to female founders. 2%. So the idea that there isn't still stuff to do for women and girls is just wrong and unhelpful. But it's also true that we have to do much better by our boys and men. And anybody who says we have to choose between the two is not our friend. We can fiercely and unapologetically advocate for boys and men and work on behalf of boys and men without in any way saying that means we need to do less for women and girls. Don't buy it if someone says it's a choice between the two. That would be like saying to someone who has a son and a daughter they have to choose which one they care about. It's not true. Don't fall for it. We don't have to roll back anything on women to help men. So I'm just going to quickly go through some data points on these various areas, and then I'm going to end with this issue of service. So mental health is an issue that's getting a lot of attention. It should, and I'm particularly worried about what's happening to some of our men. I'm going to be sharing some data on suicide rates. Anybody who's experienced the loss of a life to suicide in their family or in their friends will know that this is a very sensitive issue. So I want you to know what's coming. This is the change in suicide rates for women from 1999 to 2022 for these different age groups. So younger women at the top, middle-aged women, or I should stop saying middle-aged. I'm 55 now, so 25 to 54 is young, I guess, just younger men than 55 plus. But the point being that there's been a rise in suicide rates among all these groups of women. So we're quite right to be worried about the mental health of women and girls, and not just because of suicide, because of depression, anxiety. Now I'm going to show you the facts, same basis for men. Same time period, same age groups. The suicide rate is 4 times higher among men at all ages than it is among women. The US loses 40,000 men a year to deaths from suicide. That's as many as women we lose from breast cancer. I'm not saying they're the same kind of public health problem, but this is a public health crisis. And we have a mental health system that is not doing enough to help our boys and men. And we, candidly, as fathers and brothers and friends, are sometimes not doing enough for each other either. So just know that. 4 times higher risk of loss of life for men than women. And it's also changed by age. So I'm showing you here, this is a chart showing you what changed, the suicide rate change for the first decade of this century, so up till 2010. And you can see the youngest to the left of the middle age and the right, those two in the middle are showing you that the really big rise was among middle-aged men up until 2010. That included, of course, the Great Recession, huge economic downturns, very difficult time economically. And so there's this economic story that could potentially explain why so many of these middle-aged, late middle-aged men, their 40s and 50s, were tragically taking their lives. But since 2010, something has changed. This is the data since 2010. The change in the suicide rate since 2010. Look at the left-hand side. It's young men. The suicide rate among men under the age of 30 has risen by almost 1/3, just since 2010. And now, according to some surveys, it's higher than among middle-aged men. So there is something going on here with the mental health of our young men, which we're not paying enough attention to as a society. And I think some of that is about disconnection, some of it's about sense of yourself in the world. And this is data from Equimundo, who do a men's health report. The share of young men who believe that no one will ever fall in love with me, 34%. This is men under 30 now. 1/3 think no one will ever fall in love with me. 53% say no one really knows me. That's half our young men saying no one really knows me. And 69% say no one cares if men are okay. This is my work. I think it's your work too. Is to change this perception that we don't care and to make young men feel that we do know them, that we do have their backs, that we see them, that we hear them, and that we are here for them. In education, some of you will know this data pretty well already, probably, but anybody who's in higher education, works in higher education, knows that there is a big gender gap in higher education now. We may not know quite how big it is. In 71, 72, when we passed Title IX to promote women in higher education, Title IX has gone through many iterations since, of course, as many of you in this room will know. But the point was, look, there's a 13-point gap here in favor of men. So men were 13 percentage points more likely than women as a share to get a college degree, four-year college degree. So a pretty big gender gap, right? We need to do something about that, we said. We did. This is what happened in the 80s, this is what happened in the 90s, and this is what's happened since. There's now a 16-point gap in higher education, but it's the other way around. So there's a bigger gender gap on our college campuses today than there was in the 70s when we passed Title IX. It's just the other way around, in a way that nobody predicted. I'm not saying it's for the same reasons, I'm not saying it has the same implications, but it is just a fact that we have glaring gender gaps in our education system. Why? Well, partly because of what happens in high school. In high school, if we measure just by GPA, let's look at the bottom 10% of students. This is with the lowest GPAs in high school, and break it by gender. 2/3 of them are men, 2/3 of them are boys. So there are twice as many boys at the bottom of the distribution in high school as there are girls, and this is the rest of the distribution. Look at the right-hand side, the top 10%, it's the other way around. So the top 10% of high schoolers is 2/3 female, valedictorians even more so, and so there's just no contest right now in terms of GPA. Girls have always been slightly ahead in GPA, but now it's a very big gap. So if you're a college and you're looking at the right-hand side of this chart, it's small wonder that you're skewing towards girls, towards young women. Interesting, it's not the same on SAT. So SAT, this is showing you the same chart, decile. So the right-hand side here is top SAT scores, 1340 or above. These are high SAT scores, through to the ones at the bottom, and the gender gap. And what you can see is there isn't much of a gender gap. Not much difference. If anything, it skews a little bit male at the top. By the way, the reason for that is probably that men are less likely to take the SAT, and so those who do are more likely to be, are actually probably going to do better. It looks like you can explain all of this gap by the fact that, you know, girls are a bit more likely to choose to take the SAT than boys. But a bit overrepresented at the bottom as well. But like, it's an interesting dilemma here. It's like, why this massive gap in GPA in high schools, and basically no gap in SAT? I'm going to throw it to you as I'm in the triangle. What do you think? Just shout out. Why would we see boys doing as well as girls on SAT, but nowhere near as well on grades? They don't try. The boys you're referring to, I assume. Yes. The boys don't try. Okay? Yeah. Not enough male teachers. Nice. You read my book? Love it. Didn't prep that. Promise. Sports. What about sports?
Males tend to, I was playing football, that's why.
You focus on sports rather than grades? Yeah. Although boys are playing less sport than before, that line's going down, so maybe, but yeah. Anything else? Low self-esteem on the part of the boys? Yeah. Anything else? This is a very quiet quadrant. So they therefore don't care so much about GPA because they're not trying to get into college in the first place. They think you can go in trades. Yeah, they might be wrong about that, but yeah. Great. Anything else?
You measure different things, right?
Such as? What do you mean?
Standardized test. Someone who's not very intelligent can study a standardized test, memorize things, or not be tested. That's different than the entire semester having
Right, so
math problems.
yes. So the thing with the GPA is testing something different to SAT. Absolutely. I think what this tells me is girls are not smarter than boys. Or the other way around, in case that needs to be added. But what it does suggest is that girls get their acts together a little bit sooner than boys. And that's for good developmental reasons, right? So it's just a case that the average 16-year-old girl is on average a bit older than the average 16-year-old boy. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with the 16-year-old boy when I say that, just saying it's true. So let's put some data to that. This shows you from the age of 10 to the age of 24, for girls, something called impulse control. Impulse control is like the brake in a car, right? And then this is sensation seeking, and sensation seeking is like the gas in the car. And so sensation seeking is the bit of your brain that says, this is a great idea, I'll try that drink and drive with you to Delaware screw school tomorrow, yes, let's get drunk and jump off that bridge into the lake. Sorry, there's a bridge near where I live where the young people jump very long way into the lake. When I say young people, I mean the young men. And what you can see is that impulse control is at its lowest in these teen years in the middle, and sensation seeking is at its highest. And so in our teen years, we're much more interested in novelty, doing exciting things, taking a few risks, getting out there, and our break is a little bit not quite so developed. And so this is just girls now. Right? This is telling you in a chart that there's a reason why teens are a hot mess. So if you're a parent and you've got teens or you've had teens, don't worry about it. It's not you, it's biology. It's just tough being a teen, right? We all remember that. Or some of us may still be in it. Now I'm going to show you the same chart for boys. This is boys' impulse control. Same scale, same time period. Compare it to the one on the left. Quite a lot lower. This is boys' sensation seeking. Of course, these are averages. But in that gap, what you see is just what it's like to be a 14-year-old boy and what it's like to be a 14-year-old girl, and it is just different. And there are various implications for that around risk-taking, novelty, etc. But there's also implications for the education system, because impulse control and break is the relationship between those two things is what will determine whether or not you turn in your chemistry homework. So think about your chemistry homework. You have to be in class when it's assigned. Big problem for Bryce, as I mentioned, my son. Like, got to be there. Got to go to school, number one. Number two, be paying attention in class. Number three, make some kind of note. Remind yourself you have to do the homework. Number four, remember later somehow. Number five, decide having remembered that you're actually going to do the homework. And then what's the last step? Yes, thank you. Turn it in. For the love of God, if you do all the other steps, please turn it in. The number of times I'd say to one of my sons, "Oh, did you turn in your homework?" "Oh, no, I forgot." And the point about this chart is it just is easier on average for girls than boys. It just is, and that shows up in grades, but it doesn't show up in SAT. So the main consequence of a college, by the way, dropping SAT from its entrance requirements is that it goes 4 percentage points more female overnight. Because SAT and ACT is the only outcome measure where boys are at least holding their own. On every outcome measure, they're nowhere near. I'm not saying you shouldn't do it, but it's a consequence. And as my very helpful friend pointed out, fewer male teachers. There used to be 33% of our K-12 teachers were male, 23% now, and falling. The biggest fall is in high school, where we're now down to a third of high school teachers are male, used to be half. And so we're just cratering the share of men in our classrooms. Let me ask the young men here, how many of you are considering a career in K-12 teaching? One, God bless you. Thank you. How many of you are considering a career in finance? How many of you are considering a career in law? How many of you are considering becoming doctors? All right, that's pretty good. One teacher and only 5 times as many in all the other areas. Please consider teaching as a career. Here's my son, Bryce. Front of his 5th grade class in one of the toughest schools in Baltimore City, Maryland. Loves it, couldn't be prouder of him. And when I think about some of the negative influences that so many of our boys have in society today, and then I think about the positive message that young men can have, I think about my wonderful 6'4" son standing in front of those kids. Flesh and blood role model for those boys, many of whom don't have a great role model perhaps in their own lives. And so we need more. We need more Bryces. It's a form of service, as I've said. Wages and work. I'm going to show you what's happened to wages for women. This is women with a college degree. This is men with a college degree. Since '79, increase in wages for both. No real reduction in the gender pay gap, you'll also notice. So 2 things can be true at once. We're making progress on many measures, but we haven't really narrowed the gender pay gap for those with a college degree, largely because women take on much more of the responsibilities in the home. I'm not saying that's a bad thing, just saying it's a thing. It's true. But now look at women without a college degree. Some growth in wages, but not much since 79. So we're talking about at this point almost half a century. And then this is men without a college degree. So men without a college degree don't earn much more than men without a college degree earned half a century ago. Wage stagnation for half a century. That is a very serious challenge. It's an economic challenge, which becomes a cultural challenge for reasons I'll get onto. The other thing is, and I've forgotten the name of the psychotherapist already. Sorry, we met just a moment ago. Bart, who's a psychotherapist. Well, back in the 1970s, and I do not know when Bart trained. I don't want to make assumptions about your age, Bart, but probably a few years ago. Quite a few years ago. I'll accept that answer. In the 1970s, most psychologists were male, 68%, and nearly 40% of social workers were male. Key mental health professions with decent male representation. Here's what's happened since. Even sharper drop in the mental health professions than in the education professions. So I call these HEAL professions, health, education, administration, literacy. And so we are emptying out men as a share from our mental health professions, and then wondering why our mental health services don't serve our men enough. This is a profound problem. We have fewer men in mental health, working in mental health, than we do women working in STEM professions. And I am here to say that I think it's great that we're getting more women in STEM professions. Amazing. We have scholarships, we have programs, we have philanthropy, we have government policies to try and promote women in STEM. Amazing. What are we doing about this? Nothing. This is just a bigger problem. We need mental health services that represent us, and we need a teaching profession that represents us. And then the last thing I'm going to talk about family and fatherhood, and then I'm going to come on to solutions, including you. This shows you, well, let me set this up first. One of the things that people worry about, including my very good friend and colleague Scott Galloway, he's on our advisory council, worry about is that as more men get college degrees, as you saw earlier, as more women get college degrees compared to men, that will affect marriage rates. Because women with a college degree won't want to marry men without a college degree. They won't, quote, marry down. Very interesting question. Turns out that's completely untrue. The marriage rates among college-educated Americans haven't declined at all. As this chart shows you, this is based on the birth year of women. This is the marriage rate for women born in these different cohorts. For college-educated women in green, and then women without four-year college degree, and then women without a four-year college degree in orange. As you can see, there didn't used to be any class gap at all in marriage. Now there's a massive class gap in marriage. And so it is simply untrue that we've seen a decline in marriage rates among college-educated women, except for this bump here. College-educated women are about as likely to marry as their mothers were. All the decline has been among those with less education. We have a huge and growing class gap in American society, not least in terms of marriage, and then that affects how many kids are born outside marriage. So this is college-educated mothers. In 1990, and this is Melissa Carney's work, 2019, the share of children born outside marriage to college-educated mothers has gone from 5% to 11%. So it's doubled. But it's still only 1 in 10. 90% of the kids born to college-educated mothers are born inside marriage. Now let's look at the other education groups without college degrees. For the non-college educated, it is now the norm for kids to be born outside marriage, not inside marriage. That has profound implications for how we think about fatherhood, family, and the role of men. This is a huge issue. I said I live in East Tennessee, Butler, Tennessee. The male labor force participation rate is 45% where I live. In many parts of the country now, men earn significantly less than the women in those communities. And that is where the marriage rates have fallen the fastest. The same study that produced the earlier chart on the class gap finds that in areas where men are doing better economically, maybe in trades, are doing better economically is where the marriage rates have fallen the least. There is a relationship between men's economic flourishing and marriage rates. And so if we want to restore marriage, as many folks do, then the solution is not marriage promotion. The solution is economic flourishing for men. If men are doing well economically, women will marry them, as these charts show. Now, the trouble with all this was all a bit of a bummer, right? And there are some good news stories here too, but I don't want this to feel like the secular equivalent of the Book of Lamentations. You know how a lot of social scientists, we get our kicks from just chart after chart after chart of how horrible everything is. And then you say, well, what should we do about it? And they say, I don't know. I just wrote the book. Well, I don't want to be that guy. That's why I think they did the book. So here are some policy solutions, but then something for you to think about. I think boys should start school later. I'm very angry at DC public schools for just making this illegal, following Chicago and New York. Given that boys develop later, I think that an extra year of pre-K, more time to develop, would help with some of those education gaps. At the very least, parents should have that choice. It's very common in private schools. I think it is a great shame that public schools are actually making it harder and harder for parents to choose, in consultation with teachers, when is it best for my son to start school, or indeed my daughter, but especially the boys who are so far behind at 5 and even further behind at 15. I think this has become clear that we need more vocational training, more apprenticeships, more CTE, more hands-on learning. Turns out that that's really good for boys and men. All the evidence suggests that abstract learning doesn't do quite as well for boys. The evidence is that male students, and maybe some of the men in the room will resonate with this, I know I did, boys and young men aren't as good at learning stuff that they don't know the point of. They need to know why I should care about this before I'll care about the what. Girls and young women are a little bit better at doing apparently pointless abstract work. There's some women here, thank you. But the thing is, we don't want an education system that asks anybody to do pointless abstract work. And so it's not that actually making the work more applied, making the connection to the real world would be bad for women's and girls' learning. It wouldn't. They would also benefit from that. It's just that boys and men would really benefit from it. Right now, honestly, I think what's happening is that girls are just very often better at surviving our education system than boys are. And so a better education system all the way from K through college won't be bad for women and girls. It'll be good for them too, but it'll be especially good for boys and men. And part of that is technical high schools, CTE, etc. More apprenticeships. I'm very hopeful about this with the new administration, actually. And I've written about this as good signs, I think, that we will actually invest in apprenticeships. More male teachers. I just had an exchange with Jessica Gross, New York Times, who just criticized my views on this. You're welcome to read her piece and then my response. Her piece in the Times, mine's on my Substack, where she questions the need for more male teachers. But I have come to believe that it's incredibly important we get more male teachers, not just because I think it'll be good for academic outcomes. Well, there's some evidence for that. The evidence, candidly, is mixed. Just because of role models, mentors, coaches, etc. We often lament the lack of male role models in boys' lives. Well, what could we do about that? Well, one thing we could do is have more people like my son standing in front of them most days of the week. Kids believe their eyes, not their ears. The other thing is that about 1/3 of male teachers are also coaches. 4 times as many as the female teachers are coaches. So when you get male teachers, you get male coaches. And it may be one of the reasons why we've seen a decline in boys' participation in sport in high school. Fewer male teachers means fewer male coaches. It also means fewer male mentors. Every college campus should have a men's resource center. Most of them have a women's resource center. Obviously, this is a delicate time to be making this argument. But I think that rather than getting rid of the women's resource centers, we should be adding men's resource centers. There should be places on campus where men can go. Obviously, you're doing that. But it should be part of the institutional DNA. Men are less likely to come to college, they're less likely to stay in college, they're less likely to feel they belong in college, and they're less likely to finish college than women. And so if that isn't an argument for men's resource centers, I don't know what is. And scholarships to get more men into these HEAL jobs, health, education, etc. And equal paid leave for fathers. One of the things we're working on right now is that dads need time off for the kids as well. Maybe not at the same time. It varies by family. But the idea that paid leave is something only for mums is sexist and outdated and anti-father. And so we've got to do better by our dads, and that's the subject probably of my next book. And service. I don't think this is, in the end, primarily an economic problem or an educational problem. It's a cultural problem. I just signed up to be a big for big sisters, big brothers in Tennessee where I live. The waiting list for boys is 12 months. The waiting list for girls is 2 to 3 months because they don't have enough male volunteers. 70% of the people on Big Brothers, Big Sisters waiting list are boys because they don't have enough men putting their hands up to be bigs. We have a decline in male volunteering in many of these areas. And so I think that the call here is for men to be of service to each other, to our society, and to the boys in their lives. There's a gap. That does mean you and me. Here is the rates of volunteering by age, according to CPS in the US right now. You can see that volunteering rates kind of do rise a little bit, but you can also see that gap there in the middle where women are much more likely to volunteer than men. How about we close that gap, guys? Right? How about we step in? How about we step up? Be a big, be a scout leader, work with your fraternity brothers, think about how we can be of service to each other. That is one gender gap that I absolutely want to close. And so there's a call to service here, there's a call to solidarity here, and dare I say it, there is a call to brotherhood here. I don't think in recent history there has been a time, think back to those earlier slides, when there has been such a hunger among men, maybe especially young men, for a sense of purpose, for a sense of solidarity, and for a sense of usefulness. I showed you those suicide rates earlier. A very good study asked people to share the notes or the messages that men had provided when they took their own lives from suicide. And the 2 words that men used to describe themselves before taking their own lives were about themselves, were I am useless or I am worthless. If we can't find a way to make everybody in our society, including men, young men, feel useful and of precious worth, we're going to keep losing too many. Not just, most tragically, suicide, but to depression, to disconnection, to isolation, to online addiction. If we don't want to lose our men, we have to bring them in. And that is not going to happen as a result of some government policy. That's going to happen in the thick of everyday life. It's going to happen because of what I do. And it's going to happen because of what you do. And it's going to happen because of what this fraternity chooses to do from this point onwards. If I'm right, and I think you would, some of you at least would agree with me, that the idea of brotherhood remains an incredibly precious social resource. Maybe one of the most precious renewable resources we have. If we need more brotherhood, if we need more fraternity, if that's right, if you can't do it, then who the hell can? If you can't own and express and lean into and demonstrate the profound social and cultural value of brotherhood, not just on college campuses more generally, if you can't do that, I don't know who can. And so my call is, sure, support this work, sure, follow me on Substack, sure, follow AIBM's work. If there happen to be any billionaires in the room, funding would be great. But more, it's just, let's get shoulder to shoulder. Let's stop just acknowledging that there are challenges with our boys and men. Roll our sleeves up and do something about it in brotherhood and solidarity. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Richard.
Shall I come up there now or stay down here?
You're having fun in the triangle. so you can
I
stay
kind of
if
like
you'd
it. I
yeah.
kind of like it. It's the first time I've ever spoken in a triangle.
Yeah. I'm not sure I'm allowed to go speak from the triangle afterwards, but I'll stay. But Richard, thank you.
Thank you.
The data is sacred, like you mentioned at the front, and I think for many in the audience, many have been thinking about this for a long time. Many may not have been aware of the data to really prove out some of the things they've been thinking about. We obviously, as an organization, think a lot about this. I'd like to open it up for Q&A. Richard's offered to stay for 20 more minutes or so with Q&A. Please start to make your way to the microphones at both ends of the triangle, and you can ask Richard questions. And while you're doing that, Richard, maybe I'll ask a question I shared this morning as well, but you've been now doing these speeches with this data for a couple of years and really making your audience more aware of the underlying facts and trends that have been happening over decades, not just recently. How have your audiences typically reacted after they've heard it, and what are some of the solutions or actions that we can also pick up from some of those other conversations?
So there's a couple of things that tend to happen. Number one is the number of people who will say, I see myself in that data, my brother in that data, my son in that data, my nephew in that data. Oh, you're talking about Bryce or Fred or Bob or whoever. And so many people see themselves in the data, and as a result of that, I think sometimes feel a bit less alone. This is a collective problem, right? If your son is struggling in the education system, maybe it's not something wrong with him. There's a tendency to say we need to fix our boys rather than fix the education system, and too often we treat our boys like malfunctioning girls. And so sometimes it's quite, although it's bad news, it makes people feel, oh, it's not just me. And the other thing that happens is that women in particular, if they come to these sorts of talks, and I've had quite a lot of this, they come to the talk ready to be super mad at me. And I'm not saying that there aren't still some people who are mad at me, but by the end of the talk at least, they're like, huh, interesting. Okay, didn't know some of that. Not necessarily I agree with him about everything, but I hope in both the presentation of the sacred facts that it's not zero-sum, and also just in the tone of this, to be persuading, especially mums who someone living with, that there is a space here where we can actually take this seriously, and it doesn't have to be anti-women to be pro-men. And I think there's just too much of that on the political extremes, where we're being pitted against each other, rather than saying, no, we're all in this together. I have a bit of philanthropy from Melinda French Gates now, and I've called that fund Rise Together. That idea, I think, is that we have to rise together. We're not going to get boys and men to do better by somehow pushing women and girls down, or vice versa. We don't need to push boys and men down in order to promote women. And I think, honestly, there's been a bit of both of that in our culture recently.
So we definitely sparked something here, Richard. So you can see at both ends of the triangle,
Wow.
there's a line.
Okay.
So maybe start from the left. We'll start
Yes.
over here.
I'm gonna come up here, though, so I'm not-
Question and just rotate back and forth.
Sure. Yeah. Great. Thank you. Yeah. Okay. Let's go
Hey,
left
Richard.
first. Thank you.
Richard,
Yes.
thanks for your time. Very interesting. I have a challenge right now of raising 2 boys. It's very challenging. My question to you,
How old are they? Do you mind if I ask?
they're 11 and 15.
Right.
Yeah. My question to you is, you didn't really discuss your definition of what is a man.
Right.
I guess recently, what is a woman was a big controversy for some reason. You know, we've gone backwards, and you know, how do we take care of boys and men if we can't define what a woman is and what a man is? And also, my boys, female teachers, female counselors, female principals. How are they supposed to discuss their problems with these folks? And also, finally, when I see the search for a man and Governor Tim Walz is brought out on stage, that's not my definition of a man. So
Why not? What is it about him?
he's not truthful. He hasn't had the responsibilities of a father, of a leader. And I see that men in society who do those things are vilified. And we're taught to be guilty for being the traditional man. So I like to understand what your definition of a man is and how we can improve
Okay.
our boys and men if we don't have a definition. Thank you.
Yeah, so I'm going to disappoint you in one front. I'm not going to give you a single definition of what a man is. I think that's part of the problem, frankly, is that this is how to be a man. And the truth is that there's lots of variety, and we have to allow for that. But the chapter of my book that I was most urged to take out was the one where I point out there are some differences between men and women. And some of the ways in which men have more risk-taking, for example, is that good or bad? Well, yes. Can be good, can be bad. When it leads them to do entrepreneurial things, great. When it leads them to do stupid things, not so great. But the idea that because men are more risk-taking means that's bad. So that's part of masculinity, on average, is to be a bit more risk-taking, say. Or to have kind of more potential for aggression when necessary. There's a reason why the Ukrainian government let all the women leave, but didn't let the men leave. It's against the law to leave Ukraine if you're a man. Because I think at some level we knew that that kind of moment came when, and I'm quoting Barack Obama here, being a protector is an important part of being a man. Now, what that means changes over time, for sure. But I will say on your point about, I want more representation of men in education, K-12 education especially. But I don't think that it's the fault of the women who are currently working in education that boys are struggling. Or at least it's never an intentional thing. I think that just inadvertently, if you have a culture that is just all female, then it's going to be difficult for that culture to be as accommodating of boys. In just the same way, by the way, that a culture that's all male is probably going to do a better job of serving boys and men than women. And sometimes that's okay. But in a co-ed education system, it is not okay. And so I don't want to, this is the exchange I've just had with Jessica Gross, I don't want to in any way be accused of blaming female teachers as I advocate for more male representation. And what I've discovered is once you share the data and you share the facts, and that the women, mothers, female teachers know that you're not attacking them, they open their hearts to this conversation because they have sons. They care about the boys in their classrooms and in their lives just as much as we do. Let's go right.
Awesome. So, hello, Richard. I want to say thank you personally for doing the hard work behind gathering this evidence to present it in a very digestible form to all audiences. It's something I was fortunate enough to discover 2 years ago in undergrad, and it's helped myself work within our society a lot better.
Thank you.
But not so much but I want to talk about kind of a personal topic, so please feel the need to not answer if you don't want to, but we are a fraternity founded on the belief of God. Mm-hmm. Where do you believe that stands in these issues?
Interesting that young men are more religious now than young women and turning back towards religion. I'm Eastern Orthodox by conversion, and I was in an Orthodox church in Austin recently, and it was full, which is, I don't know if there's anybody else Eastern Orthodox in the room. A full Eastern Orthodox church in the US is a rare thing. Tend to be quite small congregations. It was full, and it was full of young men. So I asked them, and I asked the priest, what's going on here? And he said, because I was a bit worried, honestly. I think some of it can sometimes be a bit reactionary. I think some of it can be a little bit, it can be like lamenting the world where women were economically dependent on men, and men, you know, men were the dominant ones. And I think, I worry about that. He said, no. And I talked to the men, he confirmed it. Young men are looking for purpose, structure, and moral formation. And they don't get enough purpose, structure, and moral formation in the current institutions. So where do they turn? They turn to institutions that have been doing purpose and structure and moral formation for a couple of thousand years now. Great. I think churches and religious institutions have a huge role to play here in their traditional role of moral formation, not in a way that becomes anti-women, but just take seriously the need for all of us to have moral formation. And one more thing, I'm doing a theology degree as it happens. Honestly, my work around all of this stuff is, and I still have enough of a Brookings mindset to be embarrassed when I say this. We're made in the image of God. Every single one of us has a divine spark. And part of this work about everybody flourishing, men, women, in our differences and similarities, is kind of based on this conviction that the kind of necessary respect and admiration and love we have for each other can only exist if at some level we see each other as divine. And we see the divine spark in absolutely everybody. So I wouldn't typically say that, but that is a through line of all of my work. Thank you for the question.
God bless you, Richard.
Yeah, left.
Thanks for being here, Richard. My question is really just around the impacts and influences of social media that we've seen, especially lately, whether it's the Andrew Tates of the world or just the overall influence, because social media is so influential. What can we as a fraternity do to mitigate some of the negative impacts that we ourselves, our friends, our members, our brothers, our sons, are seeing because of that and because of the negative influence, where some of these thought leaders are almost weaponizing some of the data that you presented to almost give a negative spiral?
Thank you. The quick anecdote here is that when I was finishing up my book, my youngest son, Cameron, came to me and he said, "Dad, if you're writing about men, you have to write about this guy, Andrew Tate." And I said, "Who's Andrew Tate?" A sentence that many people have said in the years since. I didn't. I should have. I missed it. I've been catching up since. So Andrew Tate is a very influential online influencer. Some of his work is, I think, straightforwardly misogynist, in the sense of I think it's genuinely women-hating, and quite a lot of it isn't. So my advice on this is we should engage with the stuff with curiosity rather than contempt. I watch some Andrew Tate videos with my own sons and their girlfriends. We discuss them. What do you agree with? What do you disagree with? Do you like that? Do you not like this? What's happening now is that too many parents are like slamming their laptops in a panic, as if they've caught them kind of looking at horrible pornography or something, because it's an Andrew Tate video. So we have to be open. We have to be very careful not to dismiss the question. But the deep answer is people like Andrew Tate and others who are on a huge spectrum, I don't want to lump all these people together, are answering a question which is very similar to the question that I dodged earlier, which is, what does it mean to be a man today? And there is a hunger among a lot of men for a simple answer to that question. And someone who's demonstrating and telling them, here's the script, here's what you have to do this, do this, do this. Because they have honestly been raised and educated to have a long list of ways not to be a man. Don't be toxic, don't mansplain, don't do this. We have had a long list of don'ts for our young men and boys. We haven't had very many do's. And what Tate and others come along and say, be like this. If we don't like that script, we need another one. And I think we beat them in real life. I don't think we beat them online. Sure, I'll go on a lot of these podcasts. I'll talk to almost anybody. But the best antidote, I think about, again, some of these young men in classrooms, fifth graders are probably a bit too young, but as I think about the online influences among these young men, I think about the men in their lives. They're the antidote. The best antidote to a dangerous or unserious online figure is an honest-to-God, flesh and blood, real-life figure in the lives of those boys and men. That's why I'm obsessed with mentoring. That's why I'm obsessed with service. It's like, that's how we beat them. We beat them in real life, not online. And so that's where all of this work around service and mentoring comes in. But we have to be very careful not to react with too much contempt. Thank you for the question. No, on the right. Yeah.
Hello, Richard. Hi. So mental health, male mental health. I think it is a ginormously prevalent issue, especially among college men with all the pressures of academia. And this wasn't more prevalent to me than what had happened to me in my chapter last semester, in which we lost not one but two of our brothers within 6 days of each other. And one was my very own pledge brother. He was only 20 years old, and the other one was probably one of the best presidents my chapter's ever seen, and he was just finishing his first semester of law school. And so these are two of the most ambitiously minded men that I knew in my entire life, and we didn't see it coming. It just happened. And so, of course, as a pre-medical student, I've known the figures for a very long time, and it didn't strike me as something that could possibly be seen in front of me until it was. And I thought about what could I do, because I'm not going to let these ambitious minds die and nothing good come out of what they did, what they've done throughout their entire lives. And so I thought, maybe I could start a nonprofit organization for mental health, specifically for college men. And then I came to the realization that would probably oversaturate the amount of mental health organizations and nonprofits that already exists. And so then I'm fixing to start a sort of fund to, I guess, collect money and donate to these non-bureaucratic nonprofit organizations for male mental health, which is a good step, I think. But I want to know, and I think the rest of my chapter would also like to know, what more can we do? What more is there to do? What other steps can we take to make sure that our brothers who we loved do not die in vain?
Yeah. Well, I'm sorry for your loss. Thank you for sharing. We can ask twice, how are you doing? We can create spaces, which I'm sure you're doing, where people feel that they can open up. That's harder for men than it is for women. And we can have a long argument about why that is, or we can just accept it and do something with it. It just takes more work. You have to be more aggressive. I have a friend who now says he's pursuing aggressive friendship, which means he will not stop bugging me until I pick up the phone and talk to him. God, I'm so grateful for that. I think we need aggressive mentorship, aggressive reach out. Like, it's just, men just won't come as much. You can put the support there, the men won't come as easily. You have to go get them. You have to notice, you have to go get them. But honestly, the truth is, you can do what you can do. We can all do what we can do, and it will still happen. Some people that I've lost, it doesn't make sense. And trying to make it make sense is very often just a horrible hole to go down. And so do what we can do the work you're doing. But I would also say advocate within your institutions to have mental health services that represent the people they're supposed to serve, men, and that are trained to deal with these issues. A very high number of mental health professionals say that they are not equipped to deal with suicidality in men. That is a huge issue. And so, it is a professional problem. And that's why I worry about the declining share of men in psychotherapy and psychology. It's not because, again, I think the women are doing anything wrong. I just think that it's harder to understand some of the patterns of male mental health problems if you're a female therapist, depending on what the nature of it is. So, thank you for your work.
Thank you.
One more on the left. How are we for time? One more. Last one, and then I'm sticking around. So yes, one last one on the left, yeah.
Hi, Richard. Thank you for coming
Sorry,
today.
we won't be able to take any more after this. Is that right? Is this the last question? Last question, sorry. Yes, go.
Oh, you're okay. Well, thank you for coming. I know we all appreciate it. We all appreciate that you're here and helping us out with this. I just wanted to ask, how important is growing up with both of your parents to young boys, and what would you say is more detrimental to young boys? Growing up with divorced parents or two parents who may have grown apart, may not like each other, or may just loathe each other?
So I'd say that, and this is the area I'm working on now, so it's a great question. Growing up with engaged parents, both of them, is important for boys and girls. So it's the engagement that matters. Now, of course, it's easier to be an engaged parent if you're together, right? If mum and dad are living together, then it's much easier for them both to be engaged than if they're separated. But the evidence suggests quite strongly that even for parents who are separated, if they both remain engaged, the outcomes for their kids are pretty good. So it's really just the quality of the relationship and the engagement that seems to be what counts, rather than the particular institution. So I don't want to brush past the fact that, the traditional family had a lot going for it in that sense, at least the co-parenting side of it. But I also worry a lot, you saw the trends, is that we don't want to send a message to fathers that if they're not living with the mother, they don't count anymore. They count at least as much as they did before. And I really worry that we've benched too many of our dads, that they've been kind of left out of this equation, because the romantic relationship didn't form or hasn't survived. And so I think that's incredibly important to do both. Interesting, I think it does have a bigger effect on boys if dad's not around. That's perhaps not surprising, but it really affects girls' mental health too. One of the things I found quite interesting is that the mental health of women is quite strongly predicted in their 30s, is quite strongly predicted by the quality of their relationship with their father when they were 16. Just think about that for a moment. A 16-year-old, a young woman, what kind of relationship does she have with dad? turns out to be quite predictive of whether she's going to have good mental health going forward. That strikes me as kind of obvious now I've said it, right? Because she's figuring out the world, what men are like, what women are like, how to go out into the world. And if dad is kind of there for her, and she feels that solid force of paternal love, she's going to do better. And then, of course, for boys, less likely to act out, less likely to, or any number of outcomes. I really do think that along with brotherhood, fatherhood is a load-bearing wall in our society. And we have done a terrible job of making fathers feel that and know that and be supported in that. So if you think about like 2 load-bearing walls for society, and I think obviously motherhood, etc., but for this audience, I think 2 load-bearing walls for a good culture are fatherhood and brotherhood. And if we can rejuvenate and restore fatherhood and brotherhood, then I think we're onto something. Thank you. And thank you all for your questions and your attention. Thank you.
Richard, I just want to say thank you again. We were so fortunate to have you with us at our convention this year. As you know, we're celebrating our 125th year. We're also rolling out our new strategy, and your remarks are incredible to help us continue to understand what we can do as our organization to help boys and men in society. So thank you again for being with us. And thank you for the work that you do. Phil, would you come up and give some instructions to our brothers and guests what is next on the agenda?
All right, everybody. For our guests that are still in the room, if you can, I know there's a lot of events that are going on. If you go out this door, you'll see our team that'll be out there welcoming you to your guest events and excursions this afternoon. You'll make your way over to the registration area, and one of our team members, Brittany, can you put your hand up over there? She will meet you over there, make sure you get right to where you need to be and take care of you. We've got you all set up for your excursions. For our brothers in the room, we are going to take a 10:20. Let's come back here at 10:35 for our second business meeting. So 10:35, that gives everybody about 17 minutes. We're going to start pretty promptly to keep the wheels on the bus, but we'll come back at 10:35. So at this time, everyone will depart the room. And brothers, when you come back in, you will meet with our Sergeant of Arms who are helping us today. So let's take a moment and then we'll come back.